here by my colleague, City Councilor Ed Flynn. We're here today to discuss Docket 0803, a message and order for the appropriation order in the amount of $1,202,337 for the administrative and operating expenses for the City of Boston Preservation Committee, CPC, for the fiscal year 2020. And also a further appropriation in the order in the amount of $24,309,813 from the Community Preservation Fund, estimated revenues for the fiscal year 2020 to be appropriated and reserved for future appropriation. This matter was sponsored by our Mayor, Martin J. Walsh, and referred to the committee back on May 15, 2019. This order seeks to appropriate a total of $25,512,150 for fiscal year 20, which is based on the 1% surcharge that was adopted via the ballot initiative back on November 2016. For background reference, Mass General Laws, Chapter 44B, Section 6 calls for the City Council to make annual appropriations from the Community Preservation Fund, and that the administrative and operating expenses shall not exceed 5% of the fund's annual revenues. In this order, the appropriation amount of $1,202,337 for administrative and operating expenses is equal to 4.7% of the fiscal year 20 Community Preservation Program expenses. Just housekeeping note here, this hearing is being recorded, broadcast live on Comcast 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964, as well as boston.gov/city-council-TV. We're joined here by the administration's Chief Financial Officer and Collector Treasurer, Emma Handy, and also the Community Preservation Director for the City of Boston, Christine Poff. So my colleague, have any introductory opening comments at this time? Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Council Flaherty, and I just want to say thank you to the administration for your great work on CPA-related issues. I want to say thank you to Christine and to Emma for providing great leadership on CPA and for your involvement in the community. And Christine, I know you speak frequently to various community groups and provide real hands-on leadership, so I want to acknowledge that and say thank you. Thank you as well. I think this is one of the best opportunities that we have as CPA on historic preservation, housing, green space, our parks. It's providing invaluable resources to our city, especially some of our neighborhoods that really need some assistance. It's benefiting every neighborhood across the city. I'm proud of the CPA program. I'm proud of the funds we're getting into my district. So I just want to say thank you and continue to work closely with the administration, with Christine and with Emma on this important project. And also, as Christine knows well, the opening of Martin's Park is another 2 weeks from today, 2 weeks from now, and it's benefiting also from CPA funding. So we want to say thank you to Mayor Walsh and his administration for a beautiful park and its accessibility for persons with disabilities, which is a very important issue for me, but important issue for the city administration, and providing so many young children with an opportunity to learn and to use this park, especially our children with disabilities. So I want to say thank you, Christine and Emma, and to the Mayor's administration as well. And thank you to Councilor Flaherty for being one of the first elected officials to support CPA funding. And I think under your leadership, Councilor Flaherty, we also have strong leadership in making sure that every neighborhood is benefiting from CPA funding. So thank you, Councilor Flaherty, as well.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. We've also been joined by our Council President, City Councilor Andrea Campbell. I'm going to waive opening comments to get right into it.
Thank you.
Good. So welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Madam President. We are here, my name is Emma Handy, Chief Financial Officer for the City of Boston. I'm joined by Christine Poff, who's the CPA Director for the city, as well as the CPA team who's here. I just want to thank them all for their hard work. You all mentioned in your opening remarks what a great job that they do, and that's certainly true. They are all over the city talking to residents and organizations, and I think that's really been key to the success of the program so far. So I just want to personally thank them. We are here today because of the first order of business for CPA for the upcoming fiscal year, FY20. This is really the first step to sort of set us up so that we are ready to take on the next award round, which will actually begin to start relatively soon with opening of eligibility forms so that we can do another fall award round, fall application round, I should say, to be awarded in the sort of winter, spring timeline of next year. This is the third year of CPA. We have had 2 successful rounds. We look forward to another round, as I mentioned, that will really begin in earnest in the fall. And I also should thank the members of the CPC Commission who spend an amazing amount of time reviewing just a huge amount of applications and coming up with very, I think, sound and reasoned and fair approaches to how to fund those applications and really to distribute these resources across the city. So thank you for your consideration of this FY20 appropriation for both the awards and the administration that is integral to us running the program. And I will turn it over to Christine for anything that she wants to add.
Sure, I am. Thank you so much, counselors. And I do want to recognize that CPA staff are here. Allison Quinn, who's been doing all the complicated work with the budgets and awards and paperwork, and Nadine Brown, who she just ran out, but she is really spearheading a lot of the community relations, community outreach that you recognize. I think one important thing to note, which is that this past round that we did this fall, the second round of funding, was a combination of fiscal year 18 and $19 because we did just a pilot round to kick things off in fiscal year 18. And so it was probably the biggest amount of money we're going to have to give out for the next 10 years. So this will be a little bit of a smaller amount this year, but we're settling into a regular annual routine. Last fall, we gave out $34 million, or this winter, we gave out $34 million of fiscal year 19 funds, and in the coming year, it'll be about $24 million. And that's what we can expect to see with a little bit of increases. We were really thrilled that the mayor's advocacy at the State House for an elevated state match has been really successful. Both the House and Senate have voted to support it, which will get, we think could bring a few million, up to $5 million more dollars to Boston. And we're also hoping that this first year, because that won't go into place until 2021, but we're hoping that for FY20, that any leftover funds at the State House will go into the governor will apply them to the state match again, which could be an extra $20 million, but that will be distributed across the Commonwealth. But again, these, $1 million here and there makes a big difference and means a couple more projects that can be funded and supported. Yeah. And I guess I would say also that we are, partly because you acknowledge this, but we are really trying to make sure that we're touching every neighborhood. There are some neighborhoods, some rounds that won't get funded, and then we jump in and do extra outreach and more specific work to try to engage community leaders and city agencies to identify projects in those neighborhoods. And we're doing that again this time for this fall. We've kind of recognized that some of the outlying neighborhoods will be a little tougher every time. They're newer neighborhoods like West Roxbury, Hyde Park, Mattapan, Rosendale. They have fewer, as newer neighborhoods, they're less historic. They tend to have homes with more backyards, and so there may not be as many, neighborhood parks the way you find neighborhood parks scattered in the more downtown dense neighborhoods. But we'll just keep working at that and hopefully identify projects every time. It's helpful to have the Parks Department and D&D in our working closely with us because they help identify projects in those neighborhoods that they're working on already anyway and may need extra funding or community members have asked for more. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you very much, both in Christine. The BRA was down the other day in front of us with respect to their to the budget process, and Director Golden had referenced all of the new stuff that's going to be coming online, as
Great.
well as future stuff coming online to the tune of tens of millions of new growth and new
Yeah.
revenue. So I'd expect that those numbers should be moving north
Great.
relatively soon.
Yeah.
Quick question on the matching state funds. I know that there's continued efforts by everyone to increase the state matching funds. I guess what's the status of that? And also, to date, what have we received by way of the state matching funds over the last couple of,
Sure.
those first 2 rounds of funding?
I can answer that. Where things stand is the state budget is in conference committee right now. But because, the hopeful part is because both the House and the Senate voted the exact same increase, which will, it will raise, right now, the state match is at 11%, and it will raise it to almost 30%, not just a percentage point or two under that. And what happened this past year is it was 11%, but the governor put an extra 10 million of
Consolidated net surplus.
yeah, thank you, consolidated net surplus, into and that gave, that increased the amount to give us, I think it was an extra, oh, I should know this. Anyway, it got the match to 19%, which is great. And we hope, so we hope that it'll be regularly 30% with the additional governor's, input. And the governor did commit to signing a budget with the CPA increase. So we're hoping that, it's very positive because it's in conference and both houses have voted for it, and because the governor has committed publicly to approving a CPA increase. We expect it to go through, but
Counselor,
you
to
never
your
know.
question on totals, the FY19 budget that you adopted on community preservation for the city of Boston assumed $2.26 million of state match. We've received $3.6 million in FY19. That's our estimate as well. So I think that speaks to what Christine talked about the additional resources that the state contributed to this in FY19. We're still carrying the lower estimate for FY20 in the budget today because we'll obviously wait to see the governor's action, which is the final formal part of that process. But I think, as Christine said, looks good.
And then, Emma,
And
from our perspective,
sorry.
do the surplus revenues get carried over to the next fiscal year, or do we plan to spend all that revenue in the year which it came?
So I think it depends a little bit on the year. So in FY18, surplus, which was really city surplus at that
Yeah.
point, got carried over, and that's why, as Christine said, we had such a large round in FY19. I think the plan as of now is to spend everything that we will receive in FY20, but certainly that could change as we sort of get a better feel for what the fall round looks like. We always sort of have this open question about whether we should do one singular large fall round or try to spread it out a little bit into the year. Because of the large projects with parks and D&D, those are really important to plan in the fall, and so we're still not sure about whether it makes sense to do 2 rounds, but in that event, it might carry forward if that made sense.
Okay.
So.
Right. And I think if you think about the program, the first round, which was the sort of the shovel-ready, I thought that was sort of our biggest marketing tool, if you will, because people saw things happening in their neighborhood sort of in real time, which was encouraging, and also that led to, obviously, the second round of funding, which allowed us to do sort of more with more. So are there any folks that have applied and received the grant but have not received all their funds? I know we had some issues with some folks not having some paperwork and some glitches. There was some holdbacks, but that's a concern of mine only because if that word gets out there, then that may deter people from applying. So had a good news story in round 1. Obviously, that led to a lot of folks applying in round 2. People sort of getting ready to participate whenever that next round is, which is ballpark is when the
Yeah, well, the deadline for the application will be the end of September.
end of September.
Yeah.
And then you just got to make sure that when folks put the application in, put their best foot forward, they've lined up contractors or vendors
Right.
that everyone's going to get in the check and they're paying everybody on time. So I know that we've had some some small issues from time to time. Is that, all of those matters been resolved?
So
Can I answer that one?
Sure, go ahead.
So I'll just say globally, Christine can definitely speak better to the details than I can. First, you're absolutely right, Counselor, that as we've stood up a brand-new program, it's taken us a little bit of time to make sure that we sort of understand how to pick up speed in terms of executing contracts. I would say globally, 2 reasons why an organization today might not have all of the funds from that first round would be either because they haven't fulfilled the totality of what they're responsible for fulfilling as part of the contract that they signed with us. Obviously, we put benchmarks in there to make sure that the taxpayer money that funds CPA is paid for, paying for what they've said that they'll deliver. So that's one issue. And then the other issue is that that Christine's team has been working on sort of how do we make sure that when we fund something with CPA, that the good that we've funded is permanent, or at least protected. And so we've landed on a clawback provision that basically if the use of the funds, if the use of the land in the case of a park or something like that changes over the course of many years, that some of that CPA money would need to be repaid to the city. And so we've had to reissue some contracts to make sure that that language is in there correctly. And so those 2 things have in some cases meant that we needed to re-sign some contracts, or that we've needed to make sure that the organization understands what is required of them before we issue that final check. There are certainly some cases where the city just needs to do a better job making sure that we're getting things done as quickly as possible, and we continue to work on that process.
Perfect. Yeah, new program, growing pains to be
Right.
expected, but also it needs to be a 2-way street with deliverables and expectations from those receiving funds. Obviously, it's very precious funds, and it's a very competitive process. We've seen it very open, very transparent. We've participated. I know the folks at this table have participated along with our colleagues at those open meetings and hearings, and it's exciting to see. But I know how spirited and how competitive it is. So you guys are making some very difficult decisions in terms of assessing the applications and the proposals, and then you have to make those tough decisions as to who gets and who doesn't. And don't envy that position. You like to give to everybody, but at the very least, if someone's receiving funds, there's a level of expectation from us to them that they got to have their house in order, and they got to make sure that they're processing the paperwork and getting things in on their end as well. So, very good. Chair recognizes Council Flynn. Any questions of the panel?
Thank you, Council Flaherty. Christine, just want to follow up on Council Flaherty question he had or comment he had. The first round was kind of shovel-ready projects. The second round was more of housing. A lot of money went towards housing. Is there a theme for the next round that you want to focus on?
No, not necessarily, yeah. I think we were concerned that so little housing was funded in that pilot round that we put out the emphasis on housing. But in fact, we had many more historic preservation and open space project applications, and we still made significant investments in both of those categories.
The pre-process with eligibility forms, I think, sometimes helps to set the theme as well, because Christine's team gets a feeling for sort of who's out there and who's ready for funding and who might need, if they can do some hand-holding sort of right then and there to get them ready versus who might need to wait for another round. So we should know more in the coming months, too, about what this round will look like ahead of the formal sort of application deadline.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you, Christine. I have another question. I know I referenced it in my opening comments about Martin's Park, but access for persons with disabilities. What else are you doing citywide for young people with disabilities? How are you doing some of the outreach? What are you looking for? And how are you making our parks as ADA accessible as you possibly can?
So it's probably a little bit easier to talk about that in terms of specific projects. Like, for instance, the West Roxbury Community Garden for veterans is going to be fully accessible. We have a really exciting partnership with Wentworth, and their construction management team is building the raised beds. And if that goes smoothly, we're hoping to have them build raised beds for a lot of other projects. There's all kinds of garden planting groups that would like to partner with Wentworth. There are some other, with the Charlestown Memorial Hall, we're doing the exterior and the front of the facade of that building, and that will include an historically appropriate ramp and access to the building because they provide veteran services there. There's several other playgrounds in the works that will have accessible features. Some of them, like the Joseph Lee School in Dorchester, a third of the children at that school are on the autism spectrum. So they're really designing a playground that will meet the needs of their student population. The same with the Early Learning Center in East Boston. All the Early Learning Centers have the K-0 program and special needs students in the program. So it's, you know, we're really looking at all the playground projects, and most of them have some form of accessibility in them, which is great. And then we're also working, and most of the community garden projects do also. So specifically in terms of, and then there's a park project with new paths, and that's particularly, so there's a couple projects and some historic cemeteries with new paths that are particularly cognizant on making sure that they're wheelchair and disability accessible. Yeah.
No, thank you. And what can you tell us about some of the outreach you're doing on ensuring our parks, open space, green space for our seniors? Are you doing anything, you know, anything targeted towards seniors throughout Boston on parks and open space?
So often, and I think we see those accessibility features absolutely meeting the needs of seniors, because it's not just a child in a wheelchair. It may be someone who's older who just has walking difficulty or has a walker or a cane or something, and it should be a smooth surface for them to access. There are a few projects which have really, the best one to point to is the Mildred Haley Tenants Task Force. We're building a playground there in a really visible location that is surrounded by senior housing. And even though it's a playground for children, and it's also next to the Martha Elliott Healthcare Center, they were very insistent that special features go in for all ages. And so they have benches and game tables for seniors. They have some fitness equipment that could be for all ages, even for a senior who has, is not fully able-bodied, some things that are gentle and easy, some things for teenagers, and also play structures for children. So, I mean, those kind of projects really rise to the top for the committee and for all of us, because they are really trying to be as public as possible,
Right.
and as open as possible.
Thank you, Christine. I know it's, I know you're doing great work, especially on outreach and funding for our seniors, for persons with disabilities, for our young people, providing great open space and parks and recreation for them. And I guess my final question, maybe Emma, if you could walk us through a little bit, as it relates to the property tax, could you just provide a little bit of background where the money directly goes to when someone pays their property tax, and how it eventually ends up into CPA funds in Boston? Like,
Sure.
Can you give us even just the mechanics or the logistics of it?
Sure. So we call it a surcharge because it's not sort of technically property tax, and it's not treated as property tax. It really does, you know, when you get your property tax bill, there is a separate line for CPA, and the collecting department and the Treasury Department really do sort of hold those funds separately, and the CPA dollars go directly into the CPA fund, and are available for appropriation by the council, and then award by the CPC.
Thank you, and thank you to Emma, and thank you to Christine for being here, but also thank you for your great work on CPA issues.
Okay,
Thank you, Councilor Lynch. You recognized as Council President Andrea Campbell.
Thank you, ladies, and of course, thank you, Christine and your team, for the hard work you guys are doing in community. It's not an easy process, but it is exciting, and people are just always excited to hear about the possibility of more CPA projects coming to their neighborhood. So this is a good thing. I just had a quick question. When is the next round of applications? Sometime in September, do you know when?
Yeah, we're hoping the application will be available by mid-summer, mid-July, if all goes well.
Okay.
And then the deadline will be the end of September.
End of September.
And we have a whole series of information sessions and application assistance scheduled.
Awesome.
And we usually try to develop some kind of relationship with an applicant so that they can come in for help. Yeah, and Thadine's back in the room, but Thadine Brown has been doing a lot of community outreach and shares a lot of that support of applicants.
This is great, and we'll continue, of course, to bring ideas or to send people your way,
Great.
which is always nice, too.
Good.
But appreciate your hard work. It's not easy, so really appreciate it. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Council President. And obviously, a note on behalf of the council, too, that Allison, Quinn, and Tadine Brown, they do a great job working
Yeah, they really do.
with you. So I know that based on the opening there, we're at, for administrative and operating, we're at 4.7. I don't know, we got 0.3 left if you think we need additional staffing and/or if we have to have that conversation in the future, just because of the volume of applications, if they continue to increase, as well as hopefully get some additional funding that may give us some flexibility to allow you as the director to obviously grow your capable staff as you have right now between Allison and Tadine. So I'm sure they're
Great.
working extremely hard and they're getting pulled in 1,000 different directions. So, and it's the whole city. So it's, I can relate as a citywide city councilor going all over the city. But so if that ever becomes a point where the administrative and operating expenses are becoming restrictive, then we should be having those conversations sort of sooner rather than later to see what we can do at our level to make sure that you have the tools that you need, working obviously with Emma and her department as well. So I think that's it. My colleagues have anything additional to add? So all right, appreciate your time and attention to this matter and look forward to continued working together as we continue to move this CPA program forward. So with respect to docket 0803, the Committee on Government Operations is adjourned. I'll get a committee report turned around, and we're meeting this week. So if Michelle is amenable to that, we could have this before the floor of the council on Wednesday. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.